My name is Maya Carter, and I am 34 years old. And for as long as I can remember, I was the one who cleaned up everyone else's messes while they took the credit and the applause. I lived invisible inside my own family, like a quiet utility. I ironed my sister Hannah's interview shirts, answered my father Robert's business calls, and cooked for holiday guests while everyone else smiled at photos as if I didn't exist. Then, one December afternoon, my mother Evelyn called and said in a voice that had the smell of entitlement and stale coffee that I should prepare dinner for her dinner party of local VIPs that evening, because Hannah was busy and you always know how to make things perfect. That demand came with 24 hours notice and the expectation that I would drop everything. What happened next turned our family story upside down, exposed a secret that no one wanted in public, and led to an offer from a CEO that changed my life forever. If you like stories about the invisible becoming undeniable, hit like and subscribe. And if you are watching from somewhere quiet, tell me where you are in the comments. I read every single one. Now, go back with me to that day in December when I was standing at the sink washing plates as rain slapped the kitchen window and my phone buzzed with a calendar reminder that would not wait. Stay until the end because there is a scene you will not believe, and it will change how you think about loyalty and limits. I will tell you how I became the family maid and how that label hid a different truth. When I was a child, I remember the smell of lemon soap and the sound of my grandmother Augusta humming as she taught me to fold napkins so precise that they looked like little sculptures. She called me meticulous and laughed when my fingers trembled with concentration. Those mornings carried both warmth and a lesson. If you polished something until it shone, people would think it was always that way. In school, I loved systems and organization. I built a simple catering spreadsheet at age 16 and sold snacks to classmates with a receipt book I kept like a prize. College was hard, not because I could not afford it, but because family expectations were heavy. So I took night shifts at a local PR firm to pay tuition and learned how to draft press releases that felt like small, honest stories. That job introduced me to people like Carlos, who ran the firm's events, and Priya, who taught me the language of networking. Now, in the present, I run a boutique operations consultancy that helps small luxury restaurants scale their boutique catering services and pitch to Fortune 500 corporate events. I have a LinkedIn profile people click through to, a handful of clients, and a reputation that grows slowly but surely. To the neighborhood, and to my family, I was still the one who tidies. And that dissonance between their perception and my real work is what made the next 48 hours so sharp. The pattern of being overlooked was routine. Evelyn would call and say, "Maya, can you come early and set up? The guests will notice if the silver is dull." Hannah would ring me from the city with a laugh and ask, "Are you going to be here to serve?" And I would force a chuckle and say, "Of course." Robert would clap my shoulder in front of friends and say, "Good girl," the way you tap a dog after it fetches, and then he would forward me a link to an article about local charities, as if that were validation. But there were small, private proofs that I was building something. An email from Janelle, a PR director at a boutique hotel, asking for my advice on staffing a corporate brunch. A late-night message from Tom, my cousin, who runs a food truck, that said, "Your checklist saved my life last week," with 5 exclamation points. A short LinkedIn recommendation from an executive named Martin Lee, who had once been a client. Those notes felt like secret coins in my pocket. Then, on a Wednesday morning, when the house smelled like cinnamon and wet coats, my mother texted, "Dinner at 6. Invite the mayor and several fundraising committee members. Make something nice. You will handle it." I looked at that message, then at my calendar, where a flight confirmation blinked back at me for a meeting in Chicago with a Fortune 500 executive about a potential contract, and my chest tightened in that way that feels like a countdown. The immediate request read like a list designed to be impossible. Prepare hors d'oeuvre for 30 VIPs, including 2 vegetarian flights, a gluten-free station, a plated starter that must be dairy-free, a dessert tray with chocolate and fruit, and everything served on crystal plates, because my mother insisted on showing off old family china. She added a note about presentation and color themes that suggested she had Pinterest open and expected me to mirror it while also being invisible. I called her and we had a long exchange of practicalities and thinly veiled expectations. Maya, can you do it? She asked. Yes, I said. But I have this meeting, I began. You can reschedule, she replied coldly. It is only an afternoon, she said, as if my work was an optional hobby. Who will set tables at the country club if I'm not there? She demanded. I can hire help, I offered, and she scoffed. You always manage. That phone call hung in my ear like a timer. I wrote a list out loud while she listened. Procurement, staffing, menu, plating, transportation. I watched the rain collect at the window and felt the water be steady like a clock. I sent a text to Carlos, offering to outsource some items. He wrote back 3 sentences. I can bring 2 assistants. Priya will cover appetizers. You handle desserts. Call me now. His quick replies felt like air to breathe. Then something landed on my inbox that changed everything. Around midday, an email flagged with the name Martin Lee popped up, and the subject line read, Re-meeting request follow-up. I opened it with my hands still scented of lemon cleaner and read that a Fortune 500 executive had noticed our small firm through a LinkedIn post and wanted to pilot an employee appreciation catering program with a potential contract worth $2 million over 2 years. The numbers were precise, and the attachments detailed deliverables, timelines, and a requested signature by the end of the week. My heart did a sudden jerk that tasted of copper and possibility. I called Martin, and we spoke for a long time in the breathing space between raindrops. How soon can you present? He asked. I can be there tomorrow, I said. We need someone who can not only design the food, but manage the vendor PR and the logistics, he said. That is my specialty, I replied. He laughed softly and said, Then we need you. The stakes were suddenly immense. If I took this contract, my consultancy and my team would grow, people would be hired, and the narrative that I was the family maid would crack in public ways I could not yet predict. A confrontation followed that felt like a courtroom scene in my kitchen. My mother called again, and this time the tone was different, edged with whistle and demand. You will not go. We need you here. I have a meeting that could change everything for my business, I said. Your business is a hobby compared to family, she answered. It is not a hobby, I insisted. You always pick them over us, she accused. Who are they? I asked. Your clients, your corporate people, she shot back. Then this is who I choose, I said quietly. She threatened cutting me off from the house and the vehicles. I named names, recited the contract terms aloud, and told her about Martin and the $2 million figure. A CEO will not want our housemaid to oversee their event, she said, in a voice that tried to make me small. I matched her with facts and offers. I will bring 2 assistants. I will outsource the china. I will make sure the mayor is impressed. Or I will take the trip. For the first time, I felt the hinge of my life moving. It felt like vertigo, and then like landing. I booked the flight. At the airport, the air smelled of reheated coffee and leather, and the PA board hummed with departures. My suitcase rattled with checklists taped to the inside flap. A dozen tiny sensory moments punctuated the trip. The pressure in my ears upon ascent, the plastic cup that tasted faintly of orange, the touch of the seatbelt buckle against my palm reminding me I was fastening myself to a decision. I flew with 2 assistants that Carlos recommended, and we rehearsed the pitch in the aisle of the plane. What will we say when they ask about capacity? Carlos asked, folding a napkin like it was origami. We will show proof, I said, tapping my phone where a draft contract gleamed. What if they ask about our PR reach? Priya asked, smoothing the crease out of her blazer. We have Janelle's contacts, I replied. What if they doubt our credibility? Asked Tom over text. Then we will let Martin speak, I wrote back. Those rehearsals were more than script work. They were validation in motion. When we landed, the city smelled of cold stone and exhaust and possibility. Back home that same night, the family party began as my mother had planned, but the scene derailed into something grotesquely theatrical. The caterer, my mother insisted on hiring, brought pizza in crystal platters, thinking it would be whimsical to juxtapose rustic food with fine china. The first plate hit the table, and a guest dropped a slice of pizza that slid and smeared sauce across a crystal bowl in slow motion. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," and another laughed in a way that sounded like clapping breaking. Photos were taken, phones flashed, and without intending to, one of the attendees uploaded a video to a neighborhood app that spread faster than spilled sauce. The clip had the mayor saying, "Did she do this?" and my cousin Tom trying to block the camera as my sister Hannah tried to laugh it off. My stomach dropped, and my phone vibrated with alerts. The video comments were cruel and quick. Evelyn called me hysterical and said, "They think you did it. They think you ruined the presentation." The humiliation was sharp and public in a way that felt like glass pressed into skin. At the same time, Martin posted a short piece on LinkedIn about innovation in employee appreciation that linked to our small consultancy site and named our approach as Practical Luxury. Janelle at the boutique hotel reposted it with a note, "Operations genius behind cohesion at scale." The juxtaposition was almost cinematic. On one side, a viral clip of my family's faux pas, and on the other, a Fortune 500 executive highlighting my work. The internet drew a line between my public humiliation and my professional recognition, and it cut through the family story like a plane through fog. Messages came from people I had not spoken to in years. Offers of partnership, a journalist at Forbes requested an interview, and a PR firm emailed about crisis management and brand narrative. My phone buzzed until my thumbs ached. In the middle of that storm, I got a call from Martin. "I saw a crazy clip online," he said. "Then I saw your team's work. We want to accelerate. Can you sign?" "Yes," I said. "We will be there." His voice was steady and warm. "We need your signature and your leadership," he said. "Will you take over the pilot?" he asked. "Yes," I answered, and signed the contract that afternoon, the digital ink drying with a sound like a soft click in a room that was suddenly full of windows. The fallout for my family was immediate and messy. Evelyn felt exposed and lashed out by writing a long post on a private neighborhood group about respect and standards that read like a plea for sympathy. Hannah posted a smiling photo pretending to move on. Robert tried to call me twice and left a voicemail that I replayed 5 times before replying. Friends and acquaintances weighed in, some supportive and some cruel. My cousin Tom texted, "This is wild," and then, "I am proud of you," and then sent a voice note that sounded like it was recorded between laughter and tears. Carlos and Priya stepped up publicly to recommend our firm, and Janelle arranged a piece with a local magazine. Janelle said in an email, "We will frame the narrative. We will control the message." The control felt like muscle memory after years of operating behind the scenes. The equilibrium had shifted. Money was not the only currency. Reputation was. There were 3 moments where tension peaked, and I had to make choices that felt like scalpel cuts. The first came as I was packing to fly, and my mother sent a text that implied I was abandoning the family for greed. The text arrived like a physical strike. I remembered my grandmother's hands and the lemon soap again, and I thought of every unpaid hour I ever spent. My breath shortened, and I sat down on the hallway step. I called Hannah. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I am going to Chicago," I said. "For what?" she replied. "For the contract," I said. "How could you do that to us?" she asked, voice trembling. "I am not doing it to you. I am doing it for my work," I answered. Silence followed. "I wish you luck," she whispered, and hung up. That silence contained all the things we had not said for years, and it felt heavy and hot in my chest. The second flashpoint came when the viral clip hit, and a reporter called asking if I had anything to say about how the family had mishandled hospitality. My phone was buzzing. I sat at a small cafe table, and the coffee steamed, smelling bitter and sharp, and I read the comments aloud to myself. "Do you want to respond?" my assistant asked gently. "Yes," I said. We drafted a statement that said in plain language who I was, what my work did, and that public humiliation of someone who works with dignity was unacceptable. We included concrete evidence of contracts, metrics, and references. The statement felt like putting down a stone. People began to write back praising the clarity. The weight in my chest loosened an inch. The third moment arrived at the signature table when Martin leaned forward and said, "We need someone who can navigate family politics too." I laughed, a soft, incredulous laugh that had fear hiding in it. "I can manage teams and temperaments," I said. "This is bigger than food," he said. "We are buying into your leadership." My hands shook as I signed the digital document, and the cursor blinked like a heart. It felt like reclamation. I whispered to myself a phrase I had repeated for years, "invisible until recognized." And then I felt steadier. After the signature, everything accelerated. Martin introduced me to an executive team that included a VP named Laura, a procurement lead named Daniel, and a PR head named Janelle, who coordinated with Forbes connections. The pilot launched with a scaled test, and our small team of 6 grew to 15 within weeks. We negotiated a $2 million contract with milestones linked to employee retention metrics and net promoter scores. The press coverage framed the story not as a scandal, but as a story of leadership from unexpected places. My family went through its own public reckoning. Evelyn requested a private meeting and asked me to come over. I agreed to see her because I needed to set terms. At that meeting, I was clear. If we are going to be family, it will be with boundaries. She asked what that meant. No more last-minute demands, compensation for work I do for you, respect in public and private, I said. Hannah apologized in a way that sounded like the beginning of sincerity. Robert sent a small check to the business as a gesture and included a note, "For your independence." We agreed to seek therapy as a family to address underlying patterns and to set clear responsibilities for events. It was not painless, and it was not immediate forgiveness, but it was honest. The public reaction included support, curious skepticism, and business inquiries. If you have ever felt invisible or been asked to play the role of servant while others take the credit, tell me in the comments, starting with yes, and in a sentence or two, say what happened. Did you choose yourself, or did you fold? Your story matters. I read every comment, and I know how small it can make you feel when your work is unrecognized. If you write yes and a sentence, your experience could remind someone else that they are not alone and might give someone the courage to make a hard choice. I promise to read and to reply when I can, and to share some responses in a future video to show how community builds courage. Now continue with me, because the decision I made led to consequences nobody expected, and some moments you will have to see to believe. 1 month later, the pilot had delivered measurable results, and the initial tranche of the contract was released. We hired a full-time operations manager named Elena, an on-site chef, Marcus, and a logistics coordinator named Ajay. Our revenue increased enough to cover a small apartment that I rented separate from the family home. I sat at my new kitchen table, which smelled like fresh paper and ink from contracts, and wrote a list titled Boundaries and Billing. I sent my mother an invoice for catering assistance she had asked me to handle the previous year, and she stiffened but paid it. People in my industry began to call me not the maid, but the consultant of record. The local magazine ran a piece that said, "From invisible to influential," and Martin shared it on his executive feed. The feeling was not revenge, it was recognition, and it tasted of black coffee and something sweet. 3 months later, the pilot scaled to a regional program, and our team worked with 3 Fortune 500 subsidiaries. The PR push secured a feature in an industry newsletter and a profile that mentioned our approach to dignified staffing as a business model. We set up employee training modules that emphasized respect and clear roles, and the volume of contract inquiries tripled. Hannah began to attend a few strategy calls, not as a server, but to learn hospitality operations, because she said she wanted to understand and possibly help. We put an agreement in writing about what family events I would help with and what would be billed as professional work. That change meant not coldness, but clarity. Reconciliation for us meant contracts and boundaries, and learning new language for old roles. 6 months later, the contract renewed, and the revenue allowed me to expand into 2 new cities. We had a small office with a window that smelled of rain and leftover muffins, and a whiteboard filled with metrics. My name appeared in an online feature about women leading operations, and a Forbes contributor quoted our retention numbers as evidence that dignity and logistics can be aligned. Evelyn sent a letter that said she was proud, in a way that felt like a bridge being lowered. We had a family dinner that I did not cater but attended as an equal, and the china stayed in the cabinet. I kept my boundaries, and I negotiated a new kind of relationship that was honest and respectful. I learned that recognition cannot always be forced, but it can be claimed when you hold the facts and you do not apologize for asking for payment for your labor. In the end, the lesson I want you to take is this: invisibility is not a moral failing. It is a condition that can be changed with choices and with the courage to sign your name on the dotted line. The CEO did not save me. I negotiated with him and with myself, and I chose to step into a role I had been preparing for quietly for years. If you found this meaningful, please subscribe for more stories about how people who were underestimated took their rightful place. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their work matters. Your voice in the comments helps other people feel less alone and builds the kind of community that can turn humiliation into leverage and silence into recognition.